Okay, welcome back here on CBSBoston.com to our Democratic candidates mini debate. Representing the campaign of Hillary Clinton, Newton Mayor Setti Warren. Representing Senator Bernie Sanders, Phil Johnston, former chair of the Mass Democratic Party. Many Democrats had high hopes when Barack Obama was elected in 2008. But even when the Democrats controlled both branches of Congress in those first couple of years of his first term, much of his agenda, not all, but much of it, was bogged down in not just partisan, but ideological gridlock. How and why will your candidate, let's start with you, Setti, do any better than President Obama did with this?
Well, it's important to remember where we were in 2008. We were on the cusp of a depression, recession, serious economic problems, unemployment up in double digits. What President Obama was able to do is bring that unemployment level down, increase job creation in his 2 terms, and offer access, universal access to health care. For 50 years, the United States has tried to do that. Not to mention what's gone on internationally. And what President Obama has done there.
Yes, but the president himself, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the president himself in his State of the Union address said one of his biggest regrets was his failure to break this gridlock. How is Hillary Clinton going to do better?
So I believe that Hillary Clinton has the specific proposals and the leadership capacity to not only break through the gridlock, but actually make things happen for people in cities and towns all across the country. We know median income has not gone up in the last 10 years. We've had unemployment come down because of President Obama's initiatives. We've got to increase economic mobility. I talked about investment in real education on the ground in our communities, job training, apprenticeships that she talks about, growing entrepreneurship. 2/3 of the new jobs in the United States are going to be created by small business. She wants to invest in access for small business owners in the minority community, women community on the ground. She's going to continue to create jobs. She's going to work across the aisle to do that, and she's going to offer access for underserved
And her
communities.
ideas are just going to overwhelm this partisan resistance and ideological resistance.
Well, look, I think, when you talk to some Republican members of Congress, they realize we have to increase economic mobility. We've got to figure out how to support things like small business and entrepreneurship. We've got to figure out how to make investments in education that are specific. I think that Secretary Clinton has the capacity to do that.
Well, Phil, your candidate, Bernie Sanders, was once famously dissed by then Congressman Barney Frank, who said that an important banking reform bill was nearly killed by Sanders, even though he supported the bill, because no one in Congress could stand him. That doesn't bode well, in my mind, for how he might break the gridlock.
Exaggerate occasionally. We love him, but he's been a friend of mine for 50 years.
So how's he going to break through the gridlock?
The reality is that whoever becomes president is going to be faced with difficulties in terms of dealing with the Congress, whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. And I think that's just a reality. I was the first state chair in the country to support Obama. I'm glad I did. I have no regrets at all. As Setti pointed out, we were in a dire situation when he became president, and even with the rise of the Tea Party and the extreme discipline of the Republicans, in the Congress, who, as you well recall, when the ACA was debated, there was not one Republican who voted for it, and it was only because we were able to get Elizabeth Warren into the Senate that we were able to pass the ACA. And so it's going to be a tough row to hoe, but we need leadership and passionate leadership around these economic equity issues. And I think Bernie has demonstrated over many decades his commitment to those issues. And he's got to have, whoever the president is, if you're going to be an agent of change, you need millions of people behind you to bring about that change and to push the Congress to do that. And I think he, more than anyone else on the political scene today, is well equipped to do that.
Rebuttal?
Look, I'm a chief executive of a city, and I know I have to get things done. My test and my interview is every 4 years. I believe that Secretary Clinton, being someone who's led a department, Secretary of State, someone who's been in the Senate, someone who's been in the White House, understands you have to get things done at the end of the day. We have to increase economic mobility. We have to increase education opportunities for people and reinvent that. We've got to invest in green energy and renewable energy. and go work directly with cities to expand job opportunities and bring down the carbon footprint. She has specific proposals. She's speaking to mayors. She's speaking to people on the ground. I think she knows how to get things done. I think she will as president.
By the way, I want to say we haven't talked about college affordability, which is a big issue for Bernie Sanders and also for Elizabeth Warren, by the way, and I think for many millions of families around the country. And Bernie has a very specific plan around that, as we know. And by the way, it's very similar to what Deval Patrick proposed here at his first year as governor in Massachusetts. And that is, if you go to a public university, you don't pay tuition. That helps so that kids who graduate from college and start their careers aren't saddled with what essentially is the size of a mortgage.
But Phil, you mentioned Deval Patrick. Much of Deval Patrick's agenda wound up being gridlocked by an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature. What I'm trying to get at here, Setti is saying...
Well, some of his did, but I think he's viewed as having been a pretty successful governor.
Well, Setti is saying that Hillary Clinton's been in the Senate. She knows how to grease the wheels, basically. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What evidence is there that Bernie Sanders can match that?
I want a leader who has a passionate commitment to a set of policies that the Democratic Party needs to adopt moving forward over the next decade or more. And he has that set of policies that I think we can gather around and not only gather around within the Senate and within the House, but get millions of supporters around the country to push the United States Congress to do it. I think, look, I mean, the fact is that, we're dealing here with two candidates who have different, one is for incremental change, and I would argue until recently pretty much status quo, and the other one wants to reach for the stars. Personally, I think the Democratic Party should always be reaching for the stars. We should aim high, not low. I am happy that in the last few weeks that Hillary's come around on some of these issues, and it's encouraging. It's encouraging.
Equal time.
Look, I think we need bold leadership, people that are the president that's willing to break down barriers for average Americans. Hillary Clinton has shown that over the course of her entire career. That's no different. We talked about college affordability, folks that are saddled with loans. She has specific policies to address both of those. I think the good news is that we're having a substantive conversation on the Democratic side. One may argue that persons for incremental are bold. I believe Hillary Clinton has put some bold proposals that have not been seen before by the American public. So we disagree on incremental change. But the good news is that we're talking about substantive policies that are investing in people. And the Democratic
Robert Kennedy used to like to quote George Bernard Shaw's great line, saying, or he wrote 50, 60 years ago, which was some people see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask why not. I think that's where the Democratic Party ought to be. And to some extent, this campaign is defining the future of the Democratic Party. And as I said earlier, and I think Setti would agree with this, I like the fact that there are commonalities between the two candidates on a number of issues now. But I come down on the side of change. We need fundamental change in this country, and you can see it in the primaries on the Republican side and on our side. The public is extremely frustrated and angry about the economic inequities in this country, and it's high time that our leaders did something about it.
Last word to you on this, then one more, and I want to wrap it up.
I would agree with Phil. Look, I mean, I think Secretary Clinton, in thinking like a chief executive, has put forward specific proposals. When she talks about the opioid crisis, for example, she says we're going to dedicate $10 billion to increase access for treatment and prevention on the ground in communities. That's what folks like me want to hear that are closest to our people, our folks that are suffering through that kind of addiction. And I think the United States and the citizens of the United States do want aspiration, but they also want specifics. I think that Hillary Clinton offers that. More
so than Sanders?
Yes.
Now, Bernie's got a very specific set of proposals, and this idea that he's a one-note candidate is very wrong-headed. And if all one needs to do is to go to his website, and you can see a very specific set of proposals, some of which I've talked about here. I think both candidates have specific sets of proposals, and we'll see how the voters react to both over the next few weeks.
And that website is?
BernieSanders.com.
And
HillaryClinton.com.
oh, interesting. All right, one more, and let's wrap it up here. We'll send you on your way. Thank you both for coming in here.
Sure.
A lot of women in Massachusetts, Democrats and independents, maybe even some Republicans too, were pretty mad in 2008 that the male hierarchy of the Massachusetts political establishment, you were among them, backed Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton. A lot of women, clearly not all, particularly younger women, but a lot of women in this state feel like it's long overdue for a woman to have a turn. And certainly I don't think you would argue, though you're free to do so, I don't think you would argue that Hillary Clinton lacks the qualifications for the job. So please address that. Should that be a factor in the minds of voters as they go to the polls on Super Tuesday? Let's start with you, Setti.
Sure, I'd say two things. Number one, I believe Hillary Clinton is the most qualified candidate, not just woman, but most qualified candidate in this race today, hands down. The second thing I would say, it is significant. My daughter is 7 years old. She is watching this very, very closely. She knocked on doors with me in New Hampshire. I want my daughter to see a woman get elected president. That sends a message, just like it did when Barack Obama became president, that anyone in this country can go as far as they want to go and lead as whatever entity they so desire, and they have the capacity to do that. So I think it's significant. But I don't want us to lose the point that I believe Hillary is the most qualified candidate.
Phil, you really want to slam the door on Setti's little daughter?
No, God forbid that I would ever do such a thing.
Just kidding.
I think we're in the midst of an economic crisis and a political crisis in the country, and one can see that in the rise of Donald Trump. And I think the issues trump, to coin a term, the gender. And you know, if Elizabeth Warren had run for president, and I hope that she would have, I would have been the first one there to take a year off from my work and help her get elected. And I think it is high time, long past time, that a woman sat in the White House. But the economic issues which confront this country and the international issues which confront this country are extraordinarily important. And for me, the set of policies that Bernie Sanders has articulated is very, very important in terms of this country's future. So that's why I endorsed and I'm working for his candidacy.
Well, gentlemen, all the polls, and we'll see what the WBZ UMass Amherst poll says on Monday, but all the polls suggest it's a tight race here in Massachusetts. So let's conclude by suggesting that there's one viewer watching you right now who could be the deciding vote. They're undecided. You just got onto an elevator with them. You've got 30 seconds to close the deal. Go ahead, Phil. Close the deal.
I think Bernie Sanders represents the future of our country and certainly the future of the Democratic Party with a passionate commitment to social, racial, and economic justice for all Americans, but particularly for people who are in the middle class and people who are poor, who have seen their economic status decline and deteriorate very dramatically during the last 30 years. They have collected virtually none of the increased wealth in this country during that period. And so we need fundamental change, not incremental change. And so I would urge that one voter to support Bernie Sanders because he's the one person who represents real dramatic change.
Thank you. Setti.
I would say I've known Secretary Clinton for 20 years. I worked directly with her, for her at the White House. Saw her day in and day out over the course of 4 years. There's no one more compassionate, passionate, there's no one with more intellect that we need in the White House than Hillary Clinton. She can ensure that we offer opportunity for every person, man, woman, sexual orientation, the opportunity to reach their full potential. She is the only person in this race that can do that.
Gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you.
Good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you.
And by the way, what station will you be watching to see the turns come in?
3 guesses. WBZ.
We got to watch that, right? We have
Excellent.
to. I've got to watch WBZ. I mean,
Thanks a
where
lot.
else would
Good
we
to
do
see
that?
you, Phil.
Judd. Yeah.
Great to see you.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks for joining us here on CBSBoston.com. And by the way, come right back here for real-time results on Tuesday night, Super Tuesday. Also information about where you're voting, all that stuff's on our website. And join us on TV 38 starting at 8 o'clock Tuesday night. We're going to have some interesting analysts, results from the WBZ UMass Amherst poll, all sorts of great stuff, plus yours truly with my opinions and analysis. See you Tuesday night. Until then, thanks very much for joining us.